Today, traveling to the network, I want to tell you a story about how technology becomes a key element to solve the problematics that affect children, young people, and their families. They live in vulnerable situations. So this is a story from the south of the world. During the pandemic of COVID-19, we have been able to see children and their families who already had difficulties to survive to increase their desperation and poverty situation. The pandemic unleashed waves of violence, stopped the educative system, so limited interaction, and also caused stress, anxiety, depression, isolation. The poorest families, perhaps they lost their ventures, and it's getting hard for them to start all over again. There is no doubt that the sums of all these elements, these factors, affected the child care deeply, and perhaps children are the ones who are taking the worst part of it and the worst consequences. This is pretty obvious when we see a direct participant testimony as the one we will see.
Estos meses ha sido muy triste, ¿no? Yo tengo 5 hijos y la verdad yo va a pasar decía un mes, esperé con mis hijos sin salir, pero realmente la plata ya no había, tenía que salir, yo me vendo queso.
In this sense, a report by the National Institute of Statistics here in Bolivia says that 45% of the Bolivian homes, they do not have access to the internet. And therefore, their digital gaps make it impossible for them to advance in a world where the pandemic just boosted the virtualization. The question is it possible for us to help children from the poorest families to overcome the crisis with the help and with the use of technology? We're talking about families that never even have imagined to have a smartphone or a tablet before. Never even were able to think that they were able to make video calls before. And yes, we do believe it is possible. SOS Children's Villages is strongly invested to turn its family strengthening services into a social development program digitally operated, providing with free technology and internet access to families living in high levels of social exclusion and digital illiteracy. This is something that our National Director, Mr. Alfonso Lupo, with more than 30 years of experience working here at SOS Children's Villages, he knows about it and he wants to tell us about it.
Sin duda, fue una decisión muy atrevida, pero necesaria. Debíamos romper varios paradigmas. El primero, digitalizar un programa de desarrollo social que implica la alfabetización digital de las poblaciones más vulnerables. El transformar nuestras metodologías y herramientas psicosociales a la virtualización. El desafío financiero no fue menor para conseguir equipos e internet de manera sostenible. Pero sobre todo, el convencernos que con la tecnología se abren puertas inimaginables para que niños, niñas y familias más vulnerables puedan mejorar su situación. Pero un paradigma no menor de resolver era el de poder confiar y creer en las familias que viven en extrema pobreza, que son con las que trabajamos, pues les entregamos infraestructura digital a personas que incluso no sabían leer ni escribir, mucho menos utilizar la tecnología, pero además creímos y confiamos en su gran voluntad y capacidad de autosuperación.
The SOS Children's Villages services have been digitalized, and now we are a social care service of children and families in high social risk that take action in a digital and in a personal way. This is a mixed modality without precedents. We have adapted our methodologies. We have adapted and trained our human resources and provided more than 1,300 phones and tablets and free internet connection to protect over 7,000 children that were at risk of losing the protection of their families. Our digital intervention has many benefits because it gives us the possibility to be with the families, keeping their trust or being with them at any moment of the day. when SOS Children's Villages becomes a major support for children and parents. Technology, for example, helps us to avoid violent situations, even in late hours of the night. These are the moments where the families live real crises and they can unleash war situations. We have been able to offer online psychological support just to contain them. We have been able to perform consulting on how to act, and even we have been able to activate the governmental and state organisms just to offer a joint assistance. And this is something that Ms. Tamara González, one of our specialists, a corporate coworker.
Una noche, como a las 10 de la noche, un padre de familia que asesoro desde hace casi 2 años me llamó muy desesperado. Él me dijo que tenía ganas de golpear a su pareja, ya que había llevado a su hija de 10 años a una chichería y había permitido que ésta consuma bebidas alcohólicas. Estaba a punto de suceder un nuevo hecho de violencia. En ese momento, él necesitaba hablar y escuchar una voz de confianza para calmarse. Entonces hicimos un ejercicio de contención en caso de crisis y el papá comprendió que golpear y pelear no era la salida más sensata. Acordamos que en ese momento lo más importante era la salud de la niña y que había que llevarla inmediatamente a un hospital sin importar la hora. Una vez que atendieron a la niña en el hospital y que estaba fuera de un peligro mayor, hicimos la denuncia ante la Defensoría de la Niñez y Adolescencia del gobierno municipal. Ahora la familia continúa con apoyo terapéutico y Aldeas Infantiles SOS junto al gobierno municipal los apoya a superar la violencia y a mejorar la situación familiar. Ambos padres están colaborando en mejorar su comportamiento por el bienestar de su hija. Hacer una videollamada puede sonar un hecho simple, pero en un contexto con tan pocos recursos y hasta con analfabetismo digital puede ayudar a prevenir situaciones de violencia.
The digital intervention allows us to improve the childcare quality when SOS Children's Villages is in a video call. Well, we can advise the families regarding their child rearing, offering positive care guidelines, and perhaps develop their parental skills. Of course, education and health are also important issues that we improve with our digital intervention. With access to technology and internet, children that didn't have access to the virtual education during the pandemic, well, now they can resume their studies and catch up with their classes. And not only that, they can also access to informal education, to complementary education, learning online about topics that are from their interest. And even with professional psychopedagogic support offered by SOS Children's Villages. Something similar happens with physical and mental health because we are inviting the participants to have access to telemedicine and psychological support when it's needed, just using the digital tools. It's evident that the families that we work with, they live in poverty situations. And this raises their stress, their hunger, and risk of falling into violence. Therefore, we also work for the fathers, for the mothers' work development, who now discover technology to get training in technical areas or even to be involved in e-commerce. This is something that many of them not even imagine. They never thought that they will have internet one day. They never imagined to have a tablet someday. SOS Children's Villages digital intervention also made big changes in our teams, or in our psychologists, in our educators, in our social co-workers, because we have trained them in the use of online platforms. And they learn about virtual educative techniques, online teaching approaches, the use of games, and we adapted the psychopedagogical tools to the virtual world. All of these changes in the way we offer care to the families in the highest social exclusion situation took us to reinvent our organization as well. How always searching to make it more agile, more simple, more digital, adapting work times to the virtual world and in-person work, becoming more efficient and being more able for children and families 24 hours a day, just through a video call.
Nuestra apuesta a la digitalización es contundente. Queremos mejorar la calidad de nuestros servicios para niñas, niños y sus familias y conectarlos con más oportunidades. Aldeas Infantiles SOS en Bolivia está dando un salto cualitativo al adaptar nuestro modo de intervención familiar para mejorar la calidad de atención con poblaciones vulnerables. Este recurso digital, que implica dotar de tablets de última generación, conectividad a Internet ilimitada, empleando metodologías psicopedagógicas digitales que las operamos desde Aldeas Infantiles SOS. Además, ha generado otros efectos de valor en las familias, como ser el uso de la banca digital, el comercio electrónico, la educación virtual de niños, niñas y padres, la telemedicina, evitar la violencia intrafamiliar y aprender a crecer en familia. Pero logramos conectarlos con más oportunidades.
It would be impossible for us to make this a reality without the support of the Federation as a whole, of the GST of course, and from the PSAs as well. In this case, the Hermann Minor Fonds Deutschland, they helped us and they trusted this project to become a reality. So in this story, children and their families are taking important virtual steps with the support of SOS Children's Villages. In this history, the most vulnerable families connect with more opportunities. In this history, children use the technology to develop their love towards their families.